Okay, so let's talk about using solderless connections. Now, solderless connections sounds like, well, you just make a connection and you don't have to use any solder. But as we've discussed, soldered connections work much better and connect better with less resistance. That said, there are many applications where you might want to use solderless connectors. This is a solderless connector. It's a very large one. And I selected this so you could see what this little guy here, which is made for 22 to 18 to 22 gauge wire, what this actually is on the inside. So this is a solderless connector. Inside the solderless connector is this metal piece. Now you can see how small the metal piece is compared to the entire connector. So when you insert wire in this, you have to think about, you know, how to cut the wire at the proper length. Now, a little bit about this metal insert. If you look at the metal insert from the side, most of these metal inserts have a point where they're put together. So they have a connection point where they're put together. Now, when you go to crimp this, you take your crimping tool and you press down in two places on the connector. You need to be careful where you choose to squeeze it. Looking at it from the side, so if here's your connector and it has a connection point here, if the jaws of your crimper if they squeeze from the sides, what's going to happen is this is going to end up looking like this. And it's actually going to open up. This right here is going to open up. So the better thing to do is to take this connector and squeeze it from the side that you see here in this drawing. So this way, when this is squeezed down with the jaws on the side, this will end up being shaped like this. And it will hold the wire much better. So that's one thing to know. Another thing to know, inside that metal piece that I've been showing you, there's a small part that is extended in. So if you look at it from the end of the metal piece, you'll see this little V inside there. Well, that is made for the wire to butt up against. So if you look at it from the side, if we did a cutaway, you'd see this little thing sitting in there. Well, here comes the wire here, and it should butt up against the stop in the middle. To take that one step further, if this is your connector, and here's your little stop, you should trim your wire back to work like this. The bare wire should extend into the metal terminal, which is here. Then the insulated wire should be on the plastic part. So that way only the bare wire that you've peeled back extends into the metal connector. If we were to do it over here, here would be the bare wire, here would be the insulated part, and then your wire would extend in. That way you've got some separation between the exposed metal of the connector and your plastic sheath. This helps keep the connection from getting corroded. It doesn't do it completely, but it helps. So again, this, you can see here's a clear connector. I'm not sure if you can tell, but you can see the metal piece, how small it is inside. This one, the connector goes from here to about here. So if we're going to trim this wire, strip this wire to fit in the connector, what we want to do is we want to think about how much we're going to trim it back. So you can see it needs to go in about like that. So when we strip this wire, you select the right gauge on here. So it's 18 gauge. And we're going to lay that in the 18 gauge. And we're going to strip it just enough to go into that connector. What you do is you squeeze down the 18 gauge, put your thumb up against your pliers, hold the wire, and push it away. And now you can see the end is trimmed off. Give it a slight twist, just a gentle twist. And now when it extends into the connector, it extends in, the wire is able to go in. See if I can do this to where the camera can see it. The wire is able to go in up to that stop, and then your insulation is here. So when we crimp this, we want to make sure we don't get to the edge of the metal. So if we're looking at this, we don't want to crimp it out here on the edge. Here, you can see it that way. We don't want to crimp it out on the edge. We want to move it in a little bit, like there. So it's kind of in the middle of the wire that is part of this side. Your wire on this side would go from here over to here. So it's kind of in the middle of that area. So this one we would crimp right about here, and the other side we would crimp right about there. So when I go to crimp this connector, I'm going to come in a little bit. Let me do it with my left hand. I'm going to come in a little bit, and I'm going to crimp it. I'm going to take a look and make sure of where the split is. And then I'm going to squeeze it. You should be able to squeeze it all the way down because you're using the right anvil. Okay, and then you should be able to pull on it pretty hard and it won't come out. And if we were to trim the other side, to strip the other side, give it a light twist. Go on the other side of the connector. And we can match our crimp on this side and do that on the other side. Okay, so that's pretty strong. And if you want, you can go on the end and you can just squeeze down the end of the connector to keep out water and such. But I'm not sure if that keeps it out or actually makes a bigger area for it to come in. So I don't usually do that. I just depend on the metal to hold, and I make sure and I only strip enough of the metal wire to connect, to go into the connector. Okay, so that's it on using a solderless connector.